Here I am in the Falklands Islands. It's a large place. It's 700 miles to Antarctica. It's a long way from London or Palo Alto, 8,000 miles. It is farther than San Francisco to Delhi. So what am I doing here? The war. In 1982, there was a war between Argentina and Britain. Argentina, 400 miles away, about the distance between London and Frankfurt, invaded the Falklands Islands. 72 days later, Britain seized them back. This is a story about the war. In 1982, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. The Houses of Commons, both sides, Labour and Conservative, were appalled at what Argentina has done. Remember, the Labour Party and the Conservative fought in the Second World War. For example, Denis Healey of the Labour Party fought for the British Army and ended the war as a major with a mention in dispatches. Jim Callaghan, the 1960s Prime Minister, fought in the British Navy. When he retired, when asked about the British nuclear weapons against the Soviet Union, he said, "But if we had got to the point where it was, I felt, then I would have done it." The Second World War taught 90% of Britain you don't get soft on totalitarianism. On 2nd of April 1982, 3,400 Argentine forces travelled 400 miles and mounted Navy landings on the Falklands Islands. The invasion was met with a nominal defence by 30 Marines. Eventually, the Argies landed 12,000 men. The Falklands Islands were conquered by the Argies with an overwhelming force. The retaking of the Falklands Islands was considered extremely difficult. The US Navy considered a successful counter-invasion by the British a military impossibility. On Friday, a packed House of Commons was told a task force was going to the Falklands. The following Monday, the task force set sail from Portsmouth. The task force eventually comprised 127 ships. During the night of the 21st of May, the British landed at San Carlos Water. The bay, known as Bomb Alley by British forces, was the scene of repeated air attacks during the day by low-flying Argentine jets. From 22nd of May until the 28th of May, two approximately 500 men, slugged 30 miles on foot and approached and attacked Darwin and Goose Green, which was held by the Argentines. After a tough struggle which lasted all of the night and into the next day, the British won the battle. In all, 17 British and 48 Argentine soldiers were killed. In total, almost 1,000 Argentine troops were taken prisoner. I stayed in Darwin in April 2019 and went to do Goose Green. 100 British civilians were locked in the village hall by the RGs.
Who was who and who wasn't?
So when did you get released?
29th of May.
Released here, right?
Yep, we were here. And on this building here, there used to be a flagpole here. And if you'll see in some of the videos, you'll see that when we come out of here, we meet the paras and we're walking up this road here. They're all up here and they put the flag up on top of the cookhouse there.
Wow.
To go back to being British.
Wow.
Again.
So, when did you first hear about the paras?
Probably, for me as a child, for my memory, the main time that I remember it starting from was when they came in and they bombed the airstrip up there.
Right.
Because before that, everybody went about their daily routines, and it wasn't until then. It
was during this attack that Lieutenant Colonel H. Jones, the commanding officer of 2 Para, was killed at the head of his battalion while charging into the well-prepared Argentine positions. He was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, one of the 2 VCs awarded in the Falklands War. Colonel H. Jones, when did you...
For me, not until they were on their way in here. We had, because eventually when we were in here, we had no communication outside at all.
Okay.
None whatsoever. The only way that we found the basics, very minimum basics of what was going on, was they had a radio here that our parents took apart, because we were searched every day. They came in and searched us every day, right down to the baby that was here. So the only way we could do that, so they pulled this apart and they would put a piece here and a piece there, and then when we were able to, it would all go back together, and we used to listen to the BBC, the World Service. That's how we got a basic of what it was our way of trying. And I mean, there probably was more going on, Sean, through the adult side of it. You know, there was people. I know there's people within the settlement that would try to count them to see how many were here and so on, and pass, and if they could pass that. So there's a lot of the immediate stuff that as a child, even 12, we wouldn't have known about. Our parents wouldn't have told us about it, you know.
I'm standing in the ground at the Goose Green Airport alone. I'm waiting for the plane to land. I then went to stay with Ricky Evans in Pebble Lodge, Pebble Island. The raid on Pebble Island was a raid by British Special Forces on Pebble Island's airfields during the Falklands War, and took place on the night of the 13th or 14th of May 1982. Pebble Island is one of the Falklands Islands lying north of West Falklands. The site was used as a forward operating base for Manta and Pucara aircraft by the Argentine Air Force. SAS operatives were tasked with destroying the aircraft on the ground in an operation that echoed back to some of the unit's first missions during the North African campaign of World War II. The raid by the SAS was successful. Ricky Evans was my guide. For 1.5-inch shell, HMS Glamorgan. Israeli-made aircraft, multiple on the Mirage. Argentina made. Argentina flew 3 aircraft, and the Harriers shot the lot down. And this is the site of the crash. But the crash is going like so far away. It's about 200 or 300 push. I then went to West Falklands, Port Howard Lodge. Sue Lowe and her husband were my hosts. Which plane is this?
Skyhawk.
Skyhawk. Pristine grounds. Wow. The guy got out. This is a Dagger Mirage over in the West Falklands. The pilot came back as a
With his grandchildren.
Yeah. When was that?
About 3 years ago.
2,000 meters. Crashed 2,000 meters. C404. Finally, I took the aircraft to Stanley Airport. After Goose Green, Pebble Island and the West Falklands, Stanley seems big, but there is only 3,000 people. I met Jimmy Curtis. Like me, he also has 6 kids. They could speak to each other.
Yeah, communication cables, you can see it laying in the grass down there, so they're all linked with each other.
Right.
Yeah. So you asked what 2Power learned after Goose Green, and I think the most important thing they learned was the value of proper artillery support.
Right.
Both from the sea and also from the land.
Right.
Yeah. We use that a lot more here, and yeah. Well, 3Power also used it a lot more on London also.
Right.
The main lesson learned from Goose Green was that artillery support.
So tell me about it.
So it's a 105mm recoilless rifle, actually. Would have been on wheels. See, the end of the barrel has got the toe pin put in place, so so it can be towed by a vehicle at the moment.
Right.
The wheels are long gone. So locals would have robbed it and made a trailer or something out of them for sure. Yeah. So this is actually still technically probably part of Wireless Ridge, and it sort of morphs into Mount Longdon in the fog over that way. So this is a minefield. It's part of a long series of minefields that go all the way up that way. You can see another one on the other side of the car there. As you can see with these, they're obviously laid by engineers and mapped properly, because you can see how the pattern, you can clearly see the pattern of where they were laid.
Wow.
And how they were recovered. Not all of them are as clear as this, actually. Some of them, they had difficulty in finding everything that was alleged to be there, so they finish up having to actually dig and clear the whole of the field.
Oh God. How many were there?
In this line of fields up here, there was 1,500 mines.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the edge of the place they called the Bowl, where it was sort of like the command post for the Argentinians. It's right on the top of Longdon now. There's a couple of memorials here, as you can see. Basically what happened here is a soldier called Doc Murdoch, he advanced up out of here. He got shot by a sniper and wounded. He was making quite a lot of noise, and after a period of time, his friend, down there, Stuart Lang, otherwise known as Geordie Lang, decided to come and help him. And as soon as he came up out of there, he was shot and killed straight away.
Yep.
So this simple memorial is for the parachute regiment as a whole. What this represents is the parachute regiment, this slab of marble, and this corner that looks like it's accidentally broke off represents that the soldiers they lost on this night. So this is the regiment as a whole, and it just shows that they lost the corner of their regiment that night. And each of these poppies, this is meant to represent a poppy of each of the 23 that were killed.
Tell me about the soldiers, the soldiers who are 17.
Yeah, so there's a lot made of how young the Argentinian soldiers were in this in the war overall. But on this mountain, you can see the plaques all up there. There's a plaque up there for the youngest British soldiers killed. Two lads that died up there was just 17 years old, and one lad, I just remembered his name now, Neil Gross his name was. He actually died on his 18th birthday. So they were the youngest 3 British soldiers killed.
Go on.
Yeah, this little plaque down there to Private Craig Jones, one of the British lads killed here. He was down in this area with one of his officers, and a random artillery round landed amongst them, and the officer had his leg blown off and was very, very noisy about it. When the paramedics got down here, he was quiet. He was still alive, but he wasn't saying anything. He was just quiet. He had a small stomach injury, but the officer survives absolutely fine.
The question is, would we do the Falklands again now? There are plenty of communists and tyrants now, but I don't think so. I blame the financial ministers who worked for Labour and Conservative parties for the past 30 years in Parliament. During the Falklands War in 1982, Britain had access to about 60 frigates and destroyers. That was enough. In 2013, researcher Alexandra Clark said, "Now we have got 19 ships after the cuts. You have to use the rule of 3 for ships. 1 fighting, 1 training, and 1 recovering. Just divide 19 by 3 to see how many you've got available for operations. You could not do another Falklands War." The Royal Navy has been emancipated. It is no longer a fleet, it is a flotilla. Britain is disarming when many countries around the world are rearming. The consequence is we would lose lives, lose operational abilities, and we'd be a shadow of our former selves. Yet Britain, as an island nation, 90% of everything that comes and goes from Britain goes by sea. Until the Navy strengthens, Britain will militarily underperform Russia and China. I'm sorry. That is it from the Falklands Islands.